yang diakui standarnya secara global. Nah, ini saya kira adalah bagian penting dari upaya AMSI membangun ekosistem bisnis media yang sehat dan berkualitas kontennya. Bagaimana caranya kita membangun bisnis media yang sehat dan berkualitas kontennya? Saya kira salah satunya dengan memastikan publik memahami perbedaan antara media-media berkualitas dan media-media yang kurang berkualitas atau yang sekedar produksi konten tanpa punya kewajiban atau tanggung jawab etika. Nah, signal-signal inilah yang sebetulnya kita coba ciptakan dengan JTI, dengan Trustworthy News Initiative, sebuah sinyal supaya publik bisa membedakan mana sumber-sumber berita, sumber-sumber informasi terpercaya, yang transparan, akuntabel, yang punya kewajiban etik, yang punya punya struktur dan pola produksi yang bertanggung jawab gitu ya, pola bisnis yang bertanggung jawab, dan mana yang tidak. Jadi saya menyambut baik teman-teman yang sudah mengikuti batch pertama ini. Semoga bisa segera merampungkan proses sertifikasi dan kita bertekad ini akan terus kita tambah ya. Sekarang mungkin baru 30. Kita tahu anggota AMSI totalnya hampir 500 media. Tapi nanti harapannya pelan-pelan seluruh anggota AMSI bisa tersertifikasi JTI. Jadi harapannya itu sekarang di Trustworthy News Initiative sudah ada 80 media di Indonesia. JTI baru satu anggota AMSI juga, Project Multatuli. Selamat untuk Project Multatuli yang sudah mendahului mendapat sertifikasi, dan harapannya 30 media yang lain ini segera bisa melalui prosesnya. Saya kira prosesnya tidak sulit. Ini ada nanti dipandu oleh teman-teman sekretariat. Kita juga akan lakukan secara intensif supaya nanti segera teman-teman bisa mengisi. Kurang lebih kuesionernya itu ada lebih dari 100 pertanyaan. Tapi kalau sudah bisa dilakukan, diisi dengan baik, saya kira tidak terlalu susah. Kemudian harapannya nanti dengan support fellowship dari AMSI dan Reporters Sans Frontier, teman-teman bisa menyebarluaskan, mensosialisasikan sertifikasi JTI ini kepada audiens masing-masing. Jadi silakan membuat kampanye-kampanye publik untuk membuat pembaca Anda, audiens Anda tahu dan paham kenapa JTI ini ada di media Anda. Dan harapannya itu akan berkontribusi kepada perbaikan keterpercayaan, engagement, dan tentu saja mudah-mudahan juga mendorong makin sehatnya bisnis media teman-teman semua. Jadi saya kira ini sebuah langkah pertama yang baik. Hari ini kita akan mulai launchingnya dan sosialisasi. Saya kira sekali lagi terima kasih untuk Reporters Sans Frontier, terutama Chloe yang sudah mensupport program kita, dan terima kasih untuk teman-teman sekretariat yang sudah mempersiapkan programnya sampai sejauh ini, dan harapannya kita bisa segera melihat 30 media ini tersertifikasi dalam waktu dekat. Demikian mungkin dari saya. Terima kasih banyak. Selamat mengikuti acara ini. Terima kasih.
Baik, terima kasih Bli atas sambutan yang sangat hangat kepada teman-teman yang terpilih untuk 30 media yang terpilih untuk partisipasi dalam program ini. Selanjutnya, mari kita dengarkan paparan dari Chloe Viaudier. Chloe, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm very delighted to meet you and spend some time with you this afternoon. And thank you, AMSI, for the invitation and for gathering you all together. If that's okay, I will share some slides, tell you more about what's the initiative. I think you know already, as you've been through the past, through the Trustworthy News Initiative before, which now I think it brings another layer in the continuity of this initiative. And if you want, afterwards, we can go through a set of questions, and I would be happy to open the conversation and answer potential questions. So I will try to share my slides here. Voilà. If you have questions along the way, I can see it in the chat, so it would be fine also. So my name is Chloe. I'm Deputy Director of the Journalism Trust Initiative. I work at the Paris office of Reporters Without Borders. And we have a team of about 15 colleagues across the world to support Newsroom into achieving the Journalism Trust Initiative transparency exercise. So today I'd like to tell you four elements. The first one, to go back to the different challenges that we're facing as media outlets and NGOs in the journalism ecosystem. To tell you more about what's the Journalism Trust Initiative solution. And finally, how the tech platforms are using it and could use it in the future in order to reward media outlets. And then to work with citizens so that they can be aware and have the signal to identify newsrooms that are respecting professional practices. So the idea of the Journalism Trust Initiative, the concept itself, came from the constatation that, of course, mistrust is growing towards media and journalists, and there's a direct competition online between journalistic contents and any other types of content, the content I can share as a citizen, or advertising, or even false information that are disseminated. All this leading to a loss of revenue, audience, and visibility for journalism. So some questions were launched, like how to recognize journalism online among the other contents, which seems to be obvious, but at the moment that's not the case. And then who's deciding on tech platforms, who's deciding who's the media and who's not, and what are the criteria? Should it be the tech platforms? Should it be states, the media themselves? So from these different questions, there was the willing to find a solution and to recreate a market where trustworthy news contents have a more favorable advantage compared to other news sources, sources online. So how does it work? What you said, the idea was to have an international signal that all the actors from the ecosystem could use, not only the media outlets, but also the platform, advertisers, donors, so that media respecting professional standards could be identified easily and on the international scale. So that was the main concept, and then we had to go and make it concrete. So we worked with about 100 organizations across the world to create a standard, which is now active, and that's the Journalism Trust Initiative. So these organizations, they are basically media outlets, federations of journalists, NGOs, and tech platforms. So from all the different countries, and they worked together for 2 years to define a standard, a set of criteria, and it's been approved by the European Committee for Normalization. It could sound like a detail, but that gives the legal weight of the standard, and then that allows to use it in the different legislation to encourage platforms and force platforms to use this mechanism. So why the JTI is useful for media outlets? I will go just after on how to practice it and how you can access it easily. But at the moment, why? The idea was to give back visibility on tech platforms. So visibility thanks to algorithm indexing. So now we're working with the search engine Microsoft for media outlets that have been through the JTI to be favored in the research in the search engine. So the main idea of all this exercise is to be able to identify and favor journalistic contents online and differentiate it from other types of content. The second challenge we try to fight is the advertising. So to bring more revenue for news outlets that are using advertising, and in order not for advertising funding to be distributed into false information sources. So that's what we're doing here with different collaborations and different discussions with international actors of advertising in order to do prominence ads investment into media outlets that have been through this transparency exercise. And finally, we're working with different donors Same, in order for them to be able to identify very quickly the newsroom that are respecting professional standards, and in order to favor in the distribution of philanthropic funding these media outlets. Particularly in time of crisis, in crisis environments, where you need a very rapid reaction. That's also very useful in this sense. That's the why. Happy to answer any questions. I'm just checking in the chat if there is anything. I think that's good. Now I'm happy to tell you how it works as a newsroom to jump in and get compliant with the Journalism Trust Initiative. So basically you have 3 key steps. The first one is a self-evaluation. So we have a dedicated tool here called JTI app. We can go back together on it just afterwards. The self-evaluation is based on the standard. So it's 130 questions. It can look like a lot of questions, but it's lots of yes/no questions. It takes only a few little hours to fill and to compare with your own practices. And what are these questions about? There's 2 pillars. The first one is transparency. So who you are, who owns the media, who's the management, what are the communication channels, the location, and so on. And the second pillar is on how you work, professional practices. So if you have editorial mission, if you have a charter for conflict of interest, how the editors are trained, this type of thing. And if all these elements are available to the audience. Sometimes we have some examples of media outlets that tell us, yes, we do have editorial guidelines. Super. Can we see it? And they say, no, it's on our head, in our mind. And the goal here is not to recreate all the process, but to make it available to the public so that the trust can be gained back thanks to this transparency. Usually all the questions, the media outlets have them already. But it's more a matter of making it transparent and showing to the audience the way you work and how you are, who you are. We have some worries sometimes about many questions about if this initiative is judging the content, the opinions, the journalists, which is not the case. It's really focusing on transparency and practices. And it's not replacing existing initiatives, codes. It's complementary. And the goal is to make the landscape of all the practices you have and gain benefit from it. So if you want, I can put in the chat the link if you want to take a look at the tool. It's called JTI app. Of course, it's free. And to start the self-evaluation, you just need to create an account, a media account, and then you access the questionnaire. You're able to see all the answers are, of course, confidential on the first phase, so you can check, recorrect, update whenever you want. Once you've done with a few couple of hours with the help of AMSI also to fill this questionnaire, you have the opportunity to publish what we call transparency report, which is basically online version of all your answers gathered together. That's helpful because it allows to show the audience and the public how you work, who you are, and just add it on your webpage to give more information on all your practices. That's where, so you have the opportunity to stop here and just to do the self-evaluation, publish the report. With AMSI, I think there will be all the help from our colleagues to support, help to become compliant, answer any questions. You can stop at the transparency report level, or you can achieve the certification, which is, of course, a recommendation. But that's a different stage. So you can also delay, do it later. Like every step is very separate, and you can do it whenever you want, whenever you're ready to do so. So for the certification, all this before is self-declaratory. So you fill it on your own willing. Then the certification, you go through an independent audit, which comes to approve the declarations and ensure the audience and the partners that the answers are true. So then you receive this certification, which is valid for 2 years. Of course, that's not Reporters Without Borders that are doing the audit, but independent audit organizations. So you have the list below, but we have basically auditors available in most of the countries, and they check all the information that you have filled in the questionnaire, interview the team, and verify the different documents. It can take between 4 to 6 weeks, the time for you to send the documents to get back to it. Once you get the certification, it's valid for 2 years. Every 2 years, there's a recheck of the information. So that's the 3 steps, like self-evaluation, transparency report. You can stop here, or then go through the audit to obtain the certification. Now, maybe who's in across the world. So there's 1,700 newsroom in 85 countries. So you can see examples here on the right of media that have obtained the certification. You can see in Niger, Studio Kalangu, like it's a community radio that was one of the first media to obtain the certification. Inside Story, which is an investigative media in Greece, as well as France TV, which is the public broadcaster in France. So I think the beauty of the exercise is that all these criteria of the standard are matching or common to every media outlets. Can be online, TV, press, and that's the common denominator for professional practices. In Asia, so there's about 100 media that are involved at the moment in the evaluation process, and you can see some names here. For example, Bulatlat in the Philippines, Project Mutuality in Indonesia, Jungang Valley in Korea. So here are some examples. I just go back to the certification stage because that's an important thing. You've seen that there is a cost related to the audit because that's an independent audit. We do some grants to cover 100% of this cost, so that it avoids it to be a blocker for the exercise. But for the first 2 steps, everything is open to all the media and free. In Indonesia, there's about 20 newsrooms that joined the initiative since March. So some examples on the website, so it can also be some, if you want to take a look once it's public to see how the questions were answered, if there's any example of inspiration, that's very open. I will put the link in the chat of the other reports that have been published. And finally, before we go to questions, I just wanted to tell you maybe the next chapter of all this. I think we said it in the introductory words, but the main idea of this concept is to be able to identify, favor, and give back competitive advantage to media outlets compared to other types of content online. And it also goes to making it available to citizens, and for the citizens to be able to understand what's the Journalism Trust Initiative, but not only this, to be able to identify and select the information sources through the transparency, to ensure that they can have access to who's doing the work of the media outlet and how the work is done. So that's the next chapter of the project, to making it available to citizens. We do have examples of certified media that are doing hard work toward their audience to explain how they work, make some publications to explain like the backstage of the news production, and they're also using it here. And other media outlets that have received the certification, for example, at the bottom of each publication, they're putting the logo and saying, this is the Journalism Trust Initiative. If you want to see transparency on how we work, click on this link. And that's, I think that's helpful for transparency and the relationship with the public, of course. So that was basically the presentation, and now I would be super happy to have your questions and open the conversation. If you have any questions about anything, who's involved, how we work, this type of thing. Thank you for taking the time to listening to the more explanation on JTI.
Thank you for the presentation, Chloe. We actually have 2 questions on the chat box. First question is Anastasia Ika from Floresa asks, based on evidence or reports from media joined GTI programs, what are the crucial benefits have they gained so far? Can you maybe explain the benefits and what's the feedback for medias?
On a personal level, I think transparency is a benefit in itself, like transparency to gain back the trust of the audience and having the possibility to show how you work and who you are. I think that's the first benefit. After, if we want to talk about more concrete benefits, the visibility benefits, thanks to the algorithm indexing in the search engine Bing, is a key one. Of course, we have conversation with other tech actors to implement this in other tools. The way it's been, I go deeper in how it works. So there's a collaboration with Microsoft, willingness to deploy it with other tech platforms. And what's helping us in this exercise is the EU European Union law legislation that in 2 different texts is helping to quoting Journalism Trust Initiative as the tool to be able to identify newsroom so that platforms can favor news sources in algorithm indexation and propose a specific moderation. That's EU law, but that's being duplicated in other countries and, for example, in Canada. And that's also helping to go towards platform, including this idea to favor news sources in the search engine. So the Bing solution is one thing. The donors also, philanthropic donors. So for example, we work with IFPIN, Thomson Foundation, to ensure that philanthropic support is going to media outlets showing transparency. For advertising, that's work in progress, but I think in the coming months we'll be able to announce some collaboration with advertisers that show that they invest more in the media outlets that are having this transparency exercise. But that's more like concrete examples, but I think the first element for me is just to show the transparency, who you are, how you work. That's just like the key of this work, I guess. So I hope I answered the questions.
Thank you, Chloe, for the answer. And there's one more question regarding the account. Do you have any tutorials on how to fill it properly?
Yes, and maybe I can share my screen to show you briefly. And afterwards, we can send a tutorial by email afterwards. But basically, you go on JTI app. I will try to share my screen. I just have 1 second. I will show on my slides.
I can help you to present the screen on GTI application.
Super. I think that would be great because I'm trying to, yeah. So there's this tutorial. Yes, sorry. There is a quick video here to explain the 3 steps. And if you scroll down on the screen, you have, yes, media outlets. So here the yellow box. And then you just need to put the name of the media, the country, and your email address to create the account. Then the other questions are optional.
Jika ada yang bingung bisa langsung ditanyakan ya, kakak-kakak. Bisa langsung dipotong.
And I think it's the perfect timing right now to create the account so you can discover the questionnaire and potentially I can answer any questions to support. The percentage of target audience, you can skip this question because that's kind of like a bonus question, so it's not like really the. You can just put the country and then the address. You can edit at a later stage if easier.
Silahkan cek term of service-nya, privacy policy, dan pledge. Kalau sudah sesuai, bisa langsung diklik atau diatur. Lalu register.
Chloe, regarding the name and surname for this account, is it should be the PIC of the media, or it can be probably like editor-in-chief or anyone?
It can be. It depends on who's assigned to do this exercise, but it can be anyone from the media outlet. And you can change it afterwards. Sometimes we have the case where, for example, the editor-in-chief is starting the exercise and then someone else is assigned to do it. So you can always change afterwards the email and the name if needed. Thank you. If you want, I can share my screen to show you the type of questions and how it looks like.
That would be great. Let me give you access. Oh, you still can.
I think I'm able. Super. So I re-put here the QR code at the JTI app email address to create your account, and then we can zoom on this question on editorial mission. So basically, you have a little description of what's required, the recommendation, and then you have the number of the question. When the questions are in yellow, it's mandatory, and then when it's white, it's optional for the certification. So you see it's yes, no. So it can go maybe quicker than we thought. And on the right, you have a note, which is a basically draft box. So your notes, they are internal and no one has access to it except you. So editorial mission, if you have one, then you say yes, and then you have sub-questions afterwards. If you use, that's another set of questions, but if you use content provided by the general public, you can indicate it here. If, for example, you say no to mandatory questions, then you have a little box to explain and give, let's say, more explanation on why this is useful, why this is mandatory. if you need any support to create editorial missions, other elements, we're always here with AMSI and JTI to support and give you templates of these documents. I go back to editorial mission, so I guess most of you have it, but then the next question is it available publicly? Like, can anyone access it? And I think that's, at least from the media I've met so far, it's more rare. It exists, but it's not always available. So yes, so that's basically it. The set of questions. If there's anything, we're here. I think there is other questions in the chat, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Is there any question from anyone?
Agus dari KBR Media menyampaikan pada saat akan membuat account ada pertanyaan soal target audience, apakah ini terkait gender, usia, dan lain-lain, atau seperti apa yang dimaksud?
That's really optional questions. We don't use it so much, and that's not part of the questionnaire. It's just to have the on the media landscape, the percentage of the share. Like if you're having X% of the market, that's really market share. It's market share. So basically that's not mandatory, and you can skip it when you register. I think the most important is the name of the media, the country, which is mandatory, and then email. But the other questions, it's not so much. It's not part of the standard. It's not part of the questionnaire. It's just preliminary questions. So, so you can move to the registration directly.
Untuk ada pertanyaan lagi, pertanyaan follow up dari Mbak Anastasia. Jadi untuk bagian notesnya itu hanya tambahan, tapi apakah berdampak pada asesmen yang akan dilakukan?
No, so the answers that are taken into account is the yes, no, and then sometimes they ask for justification, so URL of your website or documents that you can provide. For the note side, it's internal. It's like a notebook. I know you can see it's a notebook here, where you can take notes for you, like ask my colleague to do this or this type of thing. But that's internal and confidential, and no one can access it, neither the certification body, neither the audience. It's really for you to help to answer the question. Maybe another element, so you can always come back and change the answers to the questions. Even when you publish the report, or if you obtain the certification, you always have the possibility to update the practices and then republish the report or recheck with the certification body. Yes, that's it. So it's very open. We are not at this stage because now we're focusing on the self-evaluation and transparency report. But in the case, if you'd like to go to the certification stage with the audit, at the moment, there was no failure in the obtention of the certification because the certification body, the auditor, gives you a time to update your practices when it's not compliant. So if they see some uncompliance, they give you a report to say that's not matching. You have this amount of time to update the processes and become compliant. So that's something I think you'll always have the possibility to change and update and obtain the certificate. Do you want me to show you briefly how it looks like as a transparency report, like the one that have been published so far? I'll just go to the website. Just here.
Ada pertanyaan juga dari Mbak Umi Kalsum, IDN Times. Beliau menanyakan, berarti transparansi yang dimaksud lebih untuk cara kerja media yang bersangkutan. Lalu bagaimana cara mengumpulkan berita, publikasi, dan lain-lainnya?
So that's the publishing distribution. That's the first set of questions. It's asked the channels where you share the news. So if it's TV, the different TV channels, online, the different websites, the social media credentials. So this is what is asked in the first set of the questionnaire. I'm not sure I answered perfectly the question. Was it the question or? And I wanted to show you here an example of the Bulatlat, which is based in Philippines. So the example of their transparency report. So it looks like this. It's basically the answers of all the questionnaire. Ask for the legal entity name, the representative of the legal entity, the contact, which are very important. And then here, the distribution channel and URL. So the URL and then the social media handles if you broadcast the different channels. And that's it, the locations where you are. If you can't make it public for safety reasons, that's understandable. So we just need for precision, the founding date, this type of elements. So you can find it here. I will share with you as an example. I'm here if you have any other types of questions. And if not, maybe we can follow up with some materials to create the account and help you to fill the questionnaire. But I feel like as you've been part of the Truth Worse News initiative, these criteria should be already in your practices, right?
Kami akan mengirimkan daftar pertanyaan untuk dipelajari terlebih dulu sebelum tiap media nanti isi kuesionernya. Jadi mungkin diperlukan beberapa informasi atau data tambahan yang dibutuhkan. Jadi sudah tersedia sebelum pengisian kuesionernya. Kami juga akan melaksanakan sesi wawancara one-on-one untuk memperjelas tiap-tiap pertanyaan, jawaban yang dimaksud seperti apa. Nanti disediakan sekitar mungkin 3 kali wawancara one-on-one untuk tiap media. Jadwalnya bisa dipilih sesuai dengan slot yang telah disediakan. Nanti juga kalau ada yang belum bergabung dalam WA Group, bisa segera bergabung. Karena segala informasi yang terkait dengan pelaksanaan program ini akan di-share juga di situ. Seperti itu. Silahkan, Chloe, kalau ingin melanjutkan.
No, same. I think we'll be in touch with AMSI to support you in the filling of the questionnaire. I really would like to highlight that's not too long, because sometimes we have the worry that it's 130 questions and it's very intense, but it goes quite fine. I'm sure the practices, you already have them into place with the former exercise you've had. And if there's any example that we can provide from other transparency report, we'd be happy. We have templates of guidelines, templates of the different mechanisms, so happy to provide them if useful, and answer any questions. And I also wanted to thank you for taking the time to be there this afternoon, and happy to meet you. And I will probably see each other again with AMSI along the way in the different steps of the process.
Thank you so much, Chloe, for the presentation today. And before we close this session, we can all have a picture together. Is that okay with everyone?
Oh, kita foto bareng ya. Sudah kan? Sudah selesai. Oh, yang foto bareng ya. Ya, selesai. Selesai dulu. Lihat saat ketiga. Kamera ini parah sekali. Kita langsung muncul.
We're going to take a group photo. Rekan-rekan yang berkenan untuk buka kamera, silakan. Udah kan? Yang belum menyalakan kamera, silakan dinyalakan dulu. Kita buat foto ditutup. Masih ada pertanyaan yang mungkin belum terpikir sekarang, baru terpikirnya nanti. Nggak masalah, silakan. Saya bantu hitungkan. Oke. 1, 2, 3. Dan slide berikutnya. Siap-siap. 1, 2, 3. Slide terakhir. 1, 2, 3. Baik, terima kasih semua sudah meluangkan waktunya hari ini. Terima kasih juga untuk Chloe for the presentation. Dengan ini saya tutup sosialisasi hari ini.
Ya, terima kasih. Kami dari Jumi dari Jepra. Kami dari Jumi di Rumah.
Thank you a lot. Thanks so much. And see you soon. Thank you. Thanks.
Makasih ya. Aku out ya.
Thank you.
Ya, silakan, makasih.
Ya, makasih. Ya.
Kalau ada pertanyaan tambahan boleh langsung chat-chat di grup ya, kakak-kakak. Jangan sungkan. Sabtu Minggu pun ayo. Makasih semuanya.
Makasih Put ya.
Thank you everyone.